This happened in 2011 when I was in the process of replacing the flooring in my storage room. I had been using this storage room for many years. Over time, the flooring had suffered a lot of wear and tear. I also noticed that some of the gaps between the floors were getting bigger and bigger. This caused a lot of trouble with cleanup because dust and debris would often get caught in these gaps. No matter how hard I tried to clean, I could not completely remove these stubborn stains. To make matters worse, some of the boards even came loose due to the aging of the floor. When I walked across the floor, it would make a harsh rubbing sound. Considering all these problems, I decided that replacing the flooring would be the best solution. One day, I moved all the stuff out of the storage room. I put the new flooring on the floor. However, just as I was concentrating on my work, I accidentally stepped on a protruding nail. A sharp pain spread through the bottom of my foot, and I sat down on the floor immediately in pain. I decided to go to the hospital right away, knowing that there was a possible risk of tetanus infection. At the hospital, I told the doctor what had happened and showed my wound. He told me that the wound looked quite deep and posed a risk of infection. To prevent a tetanus infection, he decided to give me a tetanus shot. By the next day, I began to feel a little ill. I felt tired and dizzy, and I also noticed redness and swelling around the wound. I became concerned that these reactions did not seem normal. I immediately contacted my doctor and described my symptoms to him. The doctor told me that this could be a side effect of the tetanus vaccine. The doctor suggested that I go to the hospital again for tests. I nervously rushed to the hospital, hoping to find a solution. At the hospital, the doctor told me that my body was having an allergic reaction and also that the wound was infected. He was going to give me 2 injections of penicillin. The doctor picked up a syringe with a penicillin solution. I could feel a slight sting as the medicine entered my body. Despite the sting, I tried my best to stay calm. After the first injection was given, the doctors watched my reaction carefully. They asked me if I had any discomfort or allergic reactions. Fortunately, I did not have any serious side effects and only felt a slight pain. However, after the second injection of penicillin, things suddenly changed. I felt dizzy and my vision began to blur. I tried to sit up, but my body became very heavy. Eventually, I fainted and fell to the floor. My consciousness gradually blurred, the sound and light around me gradually disappeared, and I fell into a coma. Suddenly, I appeared in the middle of a darkness. There was no sound and no light around me. All my pain disappeared. I felt as if I was floating in the void. This feeling made me feel very wonderful. When I saw the light again, I found myself floating on the ceiling of the ward, looking down on the whole room. I could clearly see all the details of the ward. My body was twitching and white foam was spilling out of the corners of my mouth. The sight both surprised and frightened me. The doctors and nurses kept performing CPR, artificial respiration, and chest compressions. There was a tense atmosphere in the ward. I saw the nurse who had administered penicillin to me earlier standing in the corner. Her expression was helpless and self-conscious, as if she was under great stress. I slowly approached her, and I tried to comfort her. When I placed my hand on her shoulder, I was surprised to find that my hand went straight through her body without any touch. I realized that I was not in the physical world now. Although I could perceive everything around me, I could not interact directly with the real world. I heard a doctor say to a nurse that we were about to lose him. This statement filled my heart with helplessness and despair. I didn't know what was going to happen next. Suddenly, a doctor rushed into the operating room, holding a particularly long syringe in his hand. The doctor quickly approached my body, and he inserted the long needle syringe into my chest. The tip of the needle penetrated the skin and went directly into the gap between my ribs. The doctor's expression was very determined. He kept adjusting the syringe to make sure the drug was injected smoothly into my body. His movements were agile and precise. In this instant, I found myself in an unfamiliar room. The walls were made of bricks and stone. They bore the marks of age. There were also some old frescoes on the walls. The furniture in the room was made of old wood. On the table there is a yellowing book and an old quill. In the corner of the room there is an old-fashioned chair. The back of the chair was carved with an intricate pattern. A faint glow permeated the entire room. Suddenly, a person walked into the room. I saw a familiar figure. It was my aunt, who had died 9 years ago. She was wearing a long pale blue dress with delicate embroidery on it. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders, as soft and shining as a waterfall. Her face beamed with a gentle smile and her eyes shone brightly. Her face seems to be untouched by the years and still retains its youthfulness. There is not a single wrinkle on her face. When I was 3 years old, my mother passed away in an accident. At that time, our family was not financially well off, and my father still needed to go out to work and could not take care of me at all times. In this situation, my aunt stepped forward and offered to take care of me. She is a kind and loving person. My aunt took me into her care and gave me the warmth of a family. Under my aunt's care, I spent many happy times. She was like a loving mother who gave me a sense of security. She taught me a lot of life lessons. Under my aunt's companionship, I grew up gradually. I gradually learned to be independent and strong under her care, and learned to face the difficulties and challenges in life. However, when I started elementary school, I returned to my father's side. She was one of the most important people in my growing up process. And she made me stronger and braver. My aunt walked towards me and hugged me gently. I said to her, "Auntie, I miss you so much. I have been missing you for the past 9 years. How are you doing now?" My aunt smiled gently, "Dear child, I have been watching over you. I am proud of you. I have lived a happy life here." My aunt patted my shoulder and said gently, "I remember when you first came to my house, you were a little uncomfortable. The new environment made you very shy." I smiled and nodded my head as I recalled the scene. We also recalled a funny incident. At that time, I had just arrived at my aunt's house and was not quite comfortable with the new environment. My aunt had specially prepared a new bed for me. During the first night, I kept rolling around in bed, trying to find a comfortable sleeping position. Suddenly, I accidentally slipped off the bed and fell to the floor. When my aunt heard the sound and rushed into the room, she couldn't help but laugh when she saw my funny face. She also learned to imitate my expression after falling off the bed, and laughter filled the whole room. Here, I talked a lot with my aunt. Finally, my aunt said to me, "It's time to go back. Your father is waiting for you." Finally, my aunt said to me, "It's time to go back. Your father is waiting for you." We walked out of the room. My aunt held my hand tenderly, her eyes full of care. She said, "Baby, you have grown up and are already a brave and strong child. Your father is waiting for you, he always loves you and wants you to be happy by his side." I looked up, tried to control my emotions, smiled and said to my aunt, "Auntie, I will never forget your love and teachings to me. I will be a good person." My aunt went on to say, "Remember, no matter where you are, my aunt will always support you." I nodded, tears slipping from the corners of my eyes, and finally, we hugged each other tightly, giving each other warmth and blessings. Finally, I turned around and left the room. After walking out of the room, I felt a strong attraction, as if an invisible force was beckoning to me. I relaxed myself and gradually moved closer to it as this force guided me. In the process of returning to my body, I felt a strong spinning and twisting, as if I was caught in a huge vortex. Everything around me became blurred, as if I had experienced a dreamlike journey. Gradually, I felt myself returning to the real world. My breathing became regular, I could feel my heart beating and blood flowing through my body. I slowly opened my eyes and found myself lying on a bed in a hospital room, surrounded by doctors and nurses. My father was also standing by the bed, looking very haggard. I smiled and waved at my father. My father held my hand tightly and said in a slightly trembling voice, "Son, you're finally awake, I was so worried about you." My father stretched out his other hand and gently stroked my cheek, with a deep fatherly love in his eyes. I smiled and said to my father, "Dad, I saw my aunt, she told me to say hello to you." My father acted very surprised and then said, "Son, maybe you're just hallucinating." I said firmly, "Dad, I'm not hallucinating, and it's not a dream. I really saw my aunt. She said a lot of things to me." My father listened and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Son, perhaps your experience has given you delusions of grandeur, and this could just be a psychological reaction. We all miss her very much, but she has been away from us for many years." He went on to say, "Son, whether real or illusionary, your experience is important. My aunt was a very important person to us all, and she gave us a lot of help. We have to be forever grateful to her." The next day, a doctor came into my hospital room. I immediately recognized him as the doctor with the long syringe that day. I looked at him gratefully and expressed my gratitude to him. The doctor looked at me suspiciously and he said, "This must be our first meeting, you must be mistaken." I replied firmly, "Doctor, I know it sounds unbelievable. But during my near-death experience, I did see you. I saw you rushing into the operating room with a long syringe in your hand." The doctor's expression became serious as he listened intently to what I had to say. I described the experience as best I could, including the darkness of the room, floating above my body. After a few moments of contemplation, the doctor took a deep breath and then said, "This does sound incredible, but we have many unanswered questions about near-death experiences. Your experience may be a unique spiritual experience. Thank you for sharing this story with me. Near-death experiences are a mysterious and complex area, and there is still much we don't understand. Each person's experience is unique. Whether the experience is real or an illusion, it becomes a part of your growth." I looked at the doctor gratefully and felt his honesty and understanding. This special experience will forever remain in my heart and inspire me to live a more meaningful life. With a grateful heart, I will continue to move forward.